The suburbs were once a picture of prosperity. Manicured lawns, good schools, you know the stereotype. Among a largely white middle class, they were the refuge from urban overcrowding and poverty in the inner city. Inner city, that's kind of a code for poor newcomers and minorities, the majority of whom lived in urban centers, where discriminatory lending and hiring practices haven't exactly helped with upward mobility. That's a bigger conversation, but my point for today is that aside from a few parts of Appalachia and the American Southwest, the old conventional wisdom about poverty and where it's concentrated was pretty accurate: in cities. In 1990, those living below the poverty line were 14% more likely to live in urban centers. But by the turn of the century, that story changed. As new wealth and industry revitalized cities like New York and Atlanta and San Francisco, driving up housing and all sorts of other costs, America's poor started moving to the peripheries. And by 2012, impoverished residents were 22% more likely to live in suburbs, where problems of poverty had been quietly growing. In the past 2 decades, the number of poor people living just outside Chicago grew by more than 84%. Outside Detroit, 87%. Outside Atlanta, 126%. The support, however, hasn't necessarily followed. Government housing programs and job training remain tied to cities, and those informal networks like church groups, community centers, even just neighbors, are in shorter supply in suburbs. And that's part of the reason why suburban poverty rates have increased faster than anywhere else. And there's more to it. The places where the money has gone have not only changed, but they've narrowed. As suburbs grow poorer and big cities become magnets for the ultra-wealthy, the urban gap between the rich and everyone else is also widening. In fact, at least a quarter of the income inequality America's seen since 1979 has been concentrated inside cities. Now, you know income inequality has been growing, but you really feel it when you go to places like San Francisco and New York. In fact, 2/3 of America's 50 largest cities are more unequal than the national average. That's right, the bluest dots on the map, the places that almost always go Democrat in a big way, are also the most unequal in the country. A growing body of evidence suggests those widening disparities actually hurt everyone. For starters, GDP. Rising inequality has knocked as many as 5 percentage points off America's cumulative gross domestic product, and a big driver of that is the limiting effects on education, which then reinforce lower social mobility and participation in the economy for America's have-nots. It's a sign that the American dream may not be working for everyone.